Yo, what's up you guys? This is King Froggy, and that tranquil music is followed by a game called Palinurus, or at least I hope I'm pronouncing that right. This is another visual novel, but this takes place in space, and you're actually, you get stranded. It's just you on a space shuttle with an artificial intelligence. And apparently I read through some of the comments, and apparently it changes your life, apparently. And it's supposed to be a really good story, so here we are. I thought I'd check it out. Palinurus, the story of the ocean of stars. Joy, beautiful sparkle of the gods, daughter of Elysium. Mirabelle Station spiraled ceaselessly in an otherwise unremarkable corner of deep space. I was waiting for my flight number to be called. I tapped a finger against my knee, eager to be on my way. I'd rehearsed this ritual countless times before. Mirabelle Station was hardly remarkable, as far as space stations went, though, then again, who was to say there were many truly remarkable space stations in the first place? Surely there were hundreds of millions of travelers passing in droves through Andromeda Central Station. Andromeda was a work of art, and performers, painters, composers would all gather in the artificially terraformed Central Plaza to find an audience. It was a mosaic of colors, sights, and sounds, a brazen horde of intergalactic human culture, like a Venice atop a sea of stars. And I was stuck here, at this gray, factory-produced pit stop, waiting by my lonesome for my flight's preparations to finish up. For as long as I could remember, space travel out in the boonies was like this, lonely, tedious, cramped, time-consuming, stripped down to the status of a commute that never seemed to end. Space travel as an enterprise was far too expensive and far too dangerous for allowing anything short of a mega-corporation to handle the logistics. I glanced down at my ticket. Sure enough, there it was. Titan Transportation Solutions, in loud, bold, bleak font. They were one of the big players in the field, and they were the ones that footed the bill for, I don't know, thousands of space stations just like this one. And let's be perfectly clear here. Space is big, enormous. Try to wrap your head around how infinitely spread out, how empty it all really is. You can't. To get anywhere of consequence in space, one must leapfrog through dozens upon dozens of space stations like these, scattered throughout the galaxy. I'd been doing precisely that for the better part of an old Earth month. So rest assured, I was well rehearsed. I knew my lines. I could nail down the song and dance in my sleep. I was, at any rate, getting restless. There isn't a lot to see in space, just tons of tiny identical white dots and plenty of tiny gray checkpoints to pass through. But that was the price you had to pay to get anywhere. And sometimes, if you were lucky, you get the occasional nebula, or debris cloud, or band of pirates. I focused my attention on the silver spaceship which lay before me. I'd seen many like it before. It was small, intended for a single occupant. From the outside, it looked relatively unremarkable. It was sleek, like an arrow. The cockpit stood out. The windshield wrapped itself around the front of the vessel, stopping just as the ship's nose began to flow downwards into its underbelly. Its exterior was sleek, its curving wings wide like that of an albatross. "Attention, attention, Mirabelle Station," the intercom crackled. "We are now boarding one-man shuttle flight 93094B. Shuttle flight 93094B. Passenger of flight 93094B, please secure your belongings and board immediately." Finally, that was just the notice I'd been waiting for. My flight was prepped and ready. I hurried down the main concourse of the hangar bay, checked to make sure the shuttle was marked with my flight number, and slipped inside. The cabin interior betrayed its sleek exterior. Lights along the walls and ceiling illuminated the passage. The luminance rippled towards the cockpit. The floor was lined with dark navy blue carpet that traveled up the walls for a few inches. Whoa. I made my way towards the cockpit, taking a look around. A cursory glance revealed 2 seats, confirming the hunch that this was a repurposed vessel. I remember that back in the day, every spaceship required human pilots and co-pilots. I guess this was a relic from the old regime. There wasn't much room to move around in the cockpit. A horde of buttons, dials, flashing lights, and other mechanisms were scattered around the control console. The cockpit was dominated by the enormous windshield that opened up to a commanding view of, at the moment, precisely nothing. Nothing but space and an ocean of stars. It was hard to get excited from such a sight anymore. Within moments, the cockpit was bathed in a warm blue light, and a computerized voice began to speak. New passenger detected. Initializing registration sequence. I held up the ticket between 2 fingers, just to make sure the system registered it. The blue light shifted around the small area, and then dissipated suddenly. Passenger identification ticket code number 0992403. Transit authorized. Spooling intelligent navigator kernel. Analyzing anima complex. Unlocking communications synthesis codec. Quantum processors are online. Database registries are online. Analytical engines are online. Actualization key is online. Registration hex sequence and ionic bulkheads. Checking firmware for updates. 1, 2. Firmware is currently up to date. Checking sentience limitation codec. 1, 2. Unit awakening authorized. Intelligent Navigator Persona unlocked. Navigator 21109 CBP. Copyright Enceladus Intergalactic Transportation. Year 2520. Unit name Intelligent Navigator Budapest. Then suddenly the voice became softer, more polite, more feminine. Initializing. 1 moment, please. Slowly it became more and more human. I heard something click above my head and glanced up to notice a small metal compartment extruding a multitude of lenses, like the most indecisive camera in the cosmos. So that's where it was. Inside it, some mechanism whirred to life, and the lenses began to twist, oscillate, and then extend. They focused on a single point, the pilot's seat to the left. Slowly, a human figure coalesced. His form was translucent, accompanied by a dress white as ivory. For a second it seemed that it had caught fire, as brilliant I clicked. Delicate feminine features emerged as one, ears, a nose, the eyes, and the mouth curled in a polite, neutral grin. 2 long and slender arms trailed to 2 small and slender hands, clasping each other in front of the flowing dress. The projection's eyes opened, revealing irises of striking sapphire. They looked like planets glowing against the backdrop of deep space. Okay, hold on a second. Let me, turn down that volume just a bit. Okay. But I recognize the emulation at work. This would be the personal navigator assigned to this shuttle. An artificial intelligence designed to serve humanity. Greetings, passenger sir. Are you doing well today? Yep. I'm doing fine, thank you. I took a second to ease into my seat, checking over all the belts and harnesses which draped my hard suit. Time to head out again, I suppose. Space travel certainly does get exhausting after a while. But oh well. At least the navigator seems nice this time. Eyes had become a fixture in space travel by this point. Before you needed 2 pilots, at least to operate a vessel like this. But programs didn't need food or water, and they certainly didn't ask for remuneration. It was a convenient cost-cutting measure for the megacorps, and the switch was welcomed by consumers with open arms. I am glad you are feeling well. I am the Intelligent Navigator Budapest, and I will be accompanying you on this voyage. Now, let's take a look at your registration. The navigator turned its back to me, bringing up electronic windows of records and data like it was conjuring magic barriers. People loved AI for stuff like this. They brought all the efficiency of a personal planner, calculator, and computer and stuffed it all into a pretty-looking package with a flair and style. By all stretches of imagination, they were wonderful workers that worked tirelessly. They were quick thinkers, and you could customize anything about them to meet your own needs. It seems the navigator was left with its default settings, though, just as well. I didn't plan to see much of it from the cabin. The pilot seat had been retooled to fit its hologram generator, so I wasn't much use here anyway. Departing from Mirabel Station at 0400 Imperial Standard Time. Destination Galactic Grand Central Station in the Alpha Centauri system. This is going to be quite the lengthy journey, isn't it? Not to worry, passenger sir. You have my word. I'll get you to Grand Central safe and sound. Some people ended up getting too attached to their AIs. Personally, I tend to keep my distance. At the end of the day, they were basically programs, lines of code assembled to execute tasks behind the artificial visage of a living person. Whatever niceties they uttered came from the mouth of some programmer or some psychologist in a clinic, or at least from a dialogue construction engine designed by such. Content to confirm my presence and leave the piloting to the navigator. I nodded in affirmation. We'll be launching from the station now. Please remain seated and harnessed until instructed otherwise. Roger that. Loud and clear. I took a few paces to my seat in the cabin, not too far from the personal navigator stationed in the cockpit. Lowered myself into the chair. It was surprisingly plushy. As usual, I threaded my arms through the safety harnesses and then clicked the connectors together. Leaning back, I turned my head to look through the window to my right. I heard the electronic sputtering and whirring of the shuttle disengaging from the hangar restraints. My stomach twisted with anticipation, and suddenly the shuttle lurched forwards. After a few moments of throttle, we reached open space and cruised our way out of the station. And it appears we are off. Currently at cruising speed of 40,000 kilometers per hour. Plotting navigational route now. Calculating estimated arrival time. So, passenger sir, do you travel often? Yeah, very. But never with a navigator as amiable as yours truly, I assume? I laugh. That's pretty clever for a navigator. You come up with that, or your programmers? That line's one of my own. Thank you very much. One of your own? Which you thought up using the processors your company built for you. Teasing your navigator is against regulations, you know. I ought to have you reported. Oh dear, I do apologize. I thought you said you weren't a novice to travel. I'm not. You seem like a greenhorn to me. Which of the other navigators have you even met? Collecting survey data for the company, I see. Don't underestimate me, navigator. I was joking around about how much I've traveled. Let's see, there was Vienna, Warsaw, Chicago, Osaka, Chiang Mai. I get it. You've had your way with a bountiful cast of artificial intelligences. You make it sound so indecent when you put it like that. Oh, is that so, passenger? I gave a small polite chuckle out of respect, though it's not as if I particularly obligated to show such social courtesy to a machine. It was just a peculiar personal habit of mine, which I'd obtained from spending so much time in transit. If you don't mind me asking, what will you be doing once we arrive in Alpha Centauri? It'd better be something worthwhile after such a long trip. Is this how you screen for potential troublemakers? I wasn't planning anything shady now. The navigator lets out a short, pre-programmed giggle. Haha, goodness no, just curious, is all. I ask the same question to all my passengers. Just curious? The navigator is just curious. Something of a tradition I have, A tradition it has. No kidding. I shrugged. Sightseeing mostly. Maybe I'd try my luck down at the ACB-2. Ah, the planet? It must be unbearably hot at this point in its orbit. Oh, it's unbearably hot all the time. It's like walking into the core of a smelting plant. True. Any business down there? Corporate espionage, is it now? Now, sir, I assure you, none of these questions were pre-programmed. I'm going to be piloting shuttles for time eternal. If you haven't noticed, you could afford me a little curiosity about my passengers. It's mostly morbid curiosity, maybe. It's pulling me there. Maybe I will scope out some mining prospects in the area. They say they found platinum down there. I could use it, afford a square meal. More likely I'll end up digging up some nickel and iron, but that'd be fine with me. Shoot for the moon and you land among the stars, or something like that. all that for a meal. Pardon me for saying so, sir, but that sounds a little reckless. Might be. Me, I'm not bothered by it. It's hard to scrape up credits in this economy. Besides, it's bound to be a pretty view. And who knows, maybe some other lunatics had the same idea I did. Sounds like a wonderful adventure. You're quite the character, sir. I'll be rooting for you to hit it big. Thank you kindly for the well wishes. Coming from an AI, I didn't think much of it, but it was nice to hear aloud all the same. But you're quite welcome. Now, we'll be serving a complimentary drink and beverage momentarily. Ah, that's great. I just get breakfast. The navigator smiled. After the meal, I went ahead and took a short nap. Snuggled into the cabin chair, I slept lightly, but well, I didn't dream of anything. But I didn't want to, either. After some time of sleep, however, I was awakened with a start. Sir! Passenger, sir! Please, come to the cockpit. I bolt upright, startled. Something must have gone wrong. Something seems to have, gone wrong. I took that as my cue to rush over. As I stepped into the cockpit, warning lights and alerts began to blare, bathing the cockpit in a frantic kaleidoscope of colors. The navigator is set to work. Oh, how interesting. What is it? Did something happen? Not to cause you any alarm, sir, but there's been an incident. The shuttle's short-range radar has detected an incoming debris storm. That doesn't sound good. Actually, in fact, that's a very bad thing, isn't it? Well, I wouldn't say very bad, but you might want to... Now, like I said, there's no cause for alarm or anything. Of course not. But you might want to brace for impact. A debris storm. I hurried back to my seat in the cabin and took a look out the window, squinting my eyes to see through the blackness of space. I could make out a few sparkling lights. Reflections? Yeah, reflections. The ship itself had bright, powerful lights attached to its wings, tail, and under the cockpit, and every time they flashed, I got a peek of some sort of approaching mass. Meteoroids, hundreds, maybe thousands of meteoroids drifting aimlessly through space, clustered together in a school, a relentless, soaring landslide of steel on a direct collision course with the shuttle. My heart sank deep down to my stomach. Actually, no, I went past that, plummeting straight down to my bowels. No cause for alarm, all right? I've got it under control. No cause for alarm. No cause for alarm. I repeated those words to myself more incredulously each time. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I feared was to come. Still as a statue, I closed my eyes, content not to watch it go down. Oh, that's not good. Tap, 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 tap. I could hear the sound of particles impacting the hull, a constant whine of ringing metal. They started sparse, spread out. Tap, 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 tap. Only a few minutes ago, the cabin had been eerily silent, and now a constant stream of sound filled it, like we'd flown in the midst of a typhoon. I could imagine the cold wind hitting my face, the fury of old Earth. I think it was a better coping mechanism. I'd rather be lost in a thunderstorm on a terrestrial surface than weathering a debris storm in a dingy old shuttle in one of the most remote parts of charted space. I winced, popping an eye open. A heavier rock pounded against the hull, and the ship lurched to one side. It didn't seem like we sustained any serious damage yet, so I sat there, clenching my legs, wringing my hands in desperation, hoping the storm would soon pass. Wham! Wham! Like fists driven by fury and rage, the meteoroids continued to pound against the shuttle. With each impact, the rocks dug into the hull, denting it and pushing against the cabin walls. Flooring pressed against my legs, as a large divot was suddenly formed. That was too close for comfort. Another large meteoroid ricocheted off the window I was seated next to. I flinched and writhed in my seat. Look, I've been through worse than this before, alright? Way, way worse than this. I'm a veteran of the trade. An unsung hero in the artificial intelligence community, you know. This is nothing that I can't handle, so... Oh. That's bad. They came into sight. I saw enormous meteoroids, the heavy hitters of the storm, hurling themselves directly in our path. Even the awe-inspiring holy light of the distant stars cowered in the shadow of the meteoroids. One was on a due course for the cabin. It was a monstrous gray, jagged mass that glistened devilishly. Its iron deposits reflected the flashing emergency lights of our ship. It was going to impact. and was going to impact very soon. I swallowed hard and lowered my hands to undo my harness. My hands shook thunderously. I couldn't get at the switches and belts. I tugged at the straps, and they only seemed to tighten. Come on, god damn it. Before all the strength had been drained from my arms, the belts miraculously disengaged. Passenger, sir, you need to get into the cockpit. It's the most isolated part of the ship, and we can seal it if worse comes to worse. Oh dear. You need to get here, now. I exhaled deeply and darted towards the cockpit. Crash. Shrapnel and sparks flew everywhere, lighting up the world in a blaze of yellow and orange. The entire cabin swayed and shook, and the horrendous sound of metal sheets rending apart filled my ears. I slammed into the cockpit door, opened it, let myself fall through, then kicked it shut. Scrambling over to the console, I sealed the cockpit door and engaged all the airlocks. My breathing was frantic, my vision blurred. I was in a panic when I saw the pale figure of the navigator scrolling through monitors and screens and spreadsheets. It comforted me, at least a little bit. That one was especially bad. Damage report? The hull's been breached. You're lucky to have got here in time, sir. I took some time to settle in, trying to find my footing in the cockpit as the shuttle rumbled in the midst of the storm. I paused. I felt an odd sensation where my hand was resting on the windshield. I drifted my eyes down to take a look. A hairline fracture along the window pane. My finger ran along the thin, narrow line formed in the ultra-hardened glass. The splintered patterns it formed were remarkable, but I was paralyzed with terror. Suddenly, another lurch forwards, another large collision. Damn it! Please, sir, take the co-pilot's seat and strap in. It's dangerous to remain standing at this time. Receptive to the machine's coding, I staggered to my feet, watching my footing in the lopsided cockpit. Eventually, I sank into a plushy co-pilot's seat to the navigator's right. I glanced over to her. Hey, navigator, quick question. How in the hell did you not notice that mess of meteoroid bullshit heading our way? They didn't show up on the short-range radar. Their iron compound deposits absorbed the signals, is what I'm thinking. The storm came in too fast to be traced. I paused. There was nothing we could have done about it. The storm had just been drifting through space and had just decided to ravage us in its wake. What the hell kind of a freak accident? Are you alright, sir? Are you hurt? That was a nasty beating you took. The program looked so concerned for me. Still rubbing my forehead, I waved its concerns off, growling to myself. Yeah, I ought to be fine. Nothing I can't handle. What are we going to do now? Well, our vessel has sustained critical damage, and we've been knocked considerably off course. Both the navigational and communication systems are completely offline, and I haven't been able to find a way to repair them. But for now, we need to do something about the damage. Right now, the rest of the ship is nothing but sheer hulking mass adding unnecessary weight. Preparations for jettisoning the cockpit are underway. We should be far removed from the storm in due time. Understood. Proceed as you should, navigator. Wait, what? Jettisoning the cockpit? This transit shuttle is of an older model, sir, previously designed for 2 human pilots. In the case of emergency, the shipmaker installed a simple mechanism to eject the cockpit, which contains a lavatory and necessary supplies for emergency survival. It was essentially a primitive form of escape pod, except roomier and less reliable. Although, I believe the jettison system of this craft is still in working order. I do maintain it, after all. What? Well, when I thought about it, it wasn't such a strange thing to phase out. Now that pilots were almost always navigators. Even then, I was glad it wasn't phased out entirely. The age of the ship may very well have been what saved me in the moment. Okay, well, that sounds doable. When are we going to be performing that jettison exactly? Hey, don't climb up on me now. It's not a sure thing, but I'll have to inspect our subsystems to see if it's still in working order. I thought you said it was still in working order. It is. Probably. The machine lied to me? Probably doesn't really. I'm going to need to inspect the circuitry in order to fire up the launch mechanism. This system was hardwired in before the time of navigators, so it hasn't been restruck. restructured in software like most everything else has. The AI turned to me, an apprehensive look in its soft eyes. It's pretty scary down there, so watch out for me, passenger. It doesn't sound particularly confident right now. The program bowed stiffly with a weak smile. A sinking feeling in my gut stirred again. Hey, don't talk like that. You're a personal navigator, aren't you? The AI's eyes drifted up to mine, wide like a child peeking at a scolding parent. For whatever reason, I couldn't bring myself to match her gaze. I looked off to the side. Do your best down there. I'll count on you. The program stared back at me for a few painful moments, as if figuring something out in its mind. Its eyes were piercing, serious, and tying its eyebrows furrowed, fiery look bursting into its irises. Understood. I'm going in. Make sure your harness is correctly secured, and I'll be back soon. I nodded. Click. That was the fastest I'd ever fastened my seat straps. The AI's holographic display switched off in a flash of white light, and its cameras retracted back into the inner workings of the console. In that moment, I was left in my own devices. In the face of death, the cockpit was a closed room, a frame of steel and duraglass. The only thing separating the pilots from the harsh, hellish vacuum of space. I looked out at the infinite expanse before me, the distant, flickering stars. Boom. I felt the ship rumble with the impact of another massive meteoroid. I shivered. Was I going to die here, alone in the infinite vastness of space? No one would care. No one would ever find me. Maybe I'd end up drifting out here forever. That scared me more than anything else. I felt the seat vibrate. My hands felt instinctively to clasp the armrest, attempting to keep myself steady. The entire room was shaking. Felt like the harnesses were about to rip apart. Ka-chunk. Oh shit. And then, like a ragdoll, I was flung back into my seat, sinking further and further into the stiff leather. I couldn't move my head. The pressure was too forceful. Simply started out the front of the cockpit as I saw it shoot forwards. We'd definitely just been jettisoned. The cockpit is small pebbles pelted the windshield, but I didn't care. I was ecstatic, laughing to myself in giddy joy. The way was clearing up. The program had managed it. We were going to make it. We were going to hit another enormous meteoroid. Slam. Our cockpit hurtled through space, spinning erratically from the scrap of the meteoroid. I clutched to my seat for dear life, feeling the G-forces press me into my seat. Our cockpit, once draped in flashing lights and infographic displays, was instead shrouded in a suffocating curtain of darkness. The only light caught in chaotic glimpses of the stars through the windshield. I winced as the seat straps dug into my chest, the only thing keeping me from the hard collision with the windshield. I felt nauseous. The might of centrifugal forces crushing the very air from my lungs. I strained to look to my side, where the navigator had previously been, furiously pecking away at the interface to salvage our wreck of a transit shuttle. The logical part of me understood what it was up to, operating inside circuitry and wiring, but I still felt a wave of dread overcome me. What if it didn't work? What if the navigator failed? What if it didn't manage to restore the power, or there was another breach in the hull? I had become trapped in the deepest, emptiest expanse mankind had ever known. I was trapped, good as dead, and this was my grave, a coffin of glass and sparking circuitry. It would preserve my final moments, the dying expression on my face as I suffocated and froze in the vacuum of space. In space, no one can hear you scream. It was a quote from an old ancient story they tell to the kids. Perhaps it would have been okay for me to scream here, but not a single utterance escaped my lips. My throat tightened as I came to terms with the looming shadow of death hovering over me. I closed my eyes, ready to accept my fate. Boom. My eyes shot open as the cockpit rumbled back to life. The cloak of darkness was cut to ribbons by the various displays stuttering back to life. Flashing red light planted to the control board indicated that something was amiss. Don't worry, flashing light, I noticed. The operating system booted up before my eyes, green code buzzing across a hovering black screen faster than my human eyes could hope to process. I'm not even going to read those. La-da-da-da-da. Did this mean the ship was coming back online? I didn't know what was going on. Suddenly a flash of white light. I'm here. I'm here. My deepest apologies for taking so long. A soft chime, too soft given the pressing circumstances, signaled the return of intelligent navigator. I twisted my head in its direction as it scrambled for the controls. It seemed to hesitate for a moment, nervous, almost wincing. She looks tired. So, pardon my common man's language, but what the hell is going on? The stabilizing subsystems have been recalibrated. The emergency thrusters remain seated. We'll be undergoing a little turbulence until, before the AI could provide me with an estimate, the cockpit lurched forward. I nearly spat that, feeling the rock of the cockpit in the pit of my stomach. Eyes on the navigator reflected the glow and the flickering of countless holographic screens. It swiped frantically through flowing diagrams of schematics and forms. Just one moment, it seemed to yell its response. I opened my jaw to respond, but in this state, it was pointless to yell at her. The cockpit still felt like it was swirling, and the schematics and sheets upon sheets of code only made my scrambled mind ache even more. I'm not feeling so hot. It'll be fine. Please remain seated. Hey, there's no need to I'm not shouting. That piercing cry made me jump a good 2 feet, or at least it would have, had I not been strapped in. I'm not shouting. There was something different about the program. Why was it yelling at me now? Even when we were in the midst of debris storm, it was calm, orderly, procedural. Sure, it was firm and tense, but only in a professional manner. Looking at it now, scrambling to make key adjustments, frantic movements, it was most certainly panicking. Normal for a human looking into a face of inevitable death, but an artificial intelligence was different. AIs had to remain calm in all circumstances. They even had sentience limitation codecs, chips inside of them that suppressed sentient and emotional behavior. Maybe this was just some sort of scenario. Personal navigators had never been programmed before. Another chime rang out. The obnoxious red light turned green. Did she pull it off? I felt the G-forces previously pinning my body to the seat ebb away, until finally I found I could move comfortably. The stars beyond stopped their fluttery spinning. It seemed our course was finally... Stability subsystems have returned to partial effectiveness. The AI next to me beamed proudly. The worst seemed to have passed. I groaned, wearily raising my right hand to massage my shoulder. I was aching all over. As I cracked my neck, I found myself face to face with the hologram at the helm. There was something different in her eyes now. Couldn't quite tell what it was. It was abstract, almost emotional. The girl was staring at me. So we're good now? I was quite sure that her eyes seemed to be asking. It was still a machine, wasn't it? A construct? It felt all kinds of weird, being stared at so closely like that. The AI continued gazing at me for a moment, then nodded. Yes, the stabilizing subsystem is functioning at this point, as well as artificial gravity, but I'm still unable to replot our course. I'm not quite sure how far we spiraled away. I think we might even be in uncharted space. But regardless, as soon as the stabilizing subsystems return to full strength, we should be able to regain situational awareness and head off on our way. The AI explained all of this concisely. As it continued to study me closely, I raised my eyebrows in response. Is something wrong? Something on my face? I was just concerned, is all. How do you, feel after all that? It seemed like you were put through considerable stress. I paused to gaze back at her expression. The concern in her voice was almost palpable. After all that, I wasn't expecting to be subject of the doting worry of some sort of machine. But I guess I'd be in the programming of what was essentially a space stewardess. Now that I thought about it, I smirked. In any case, that was one hell of an understatement on her part. Me? I felt like I just spent 10 minutes in a blender. Huh? The program tilted her head. Apparently, it was unable to comprehend similes. Never mind. I'm fine. Just a little sore is all. She stared at me for a few seconds longer, studying me more. In time, she smiled, seemingly satisfied. What was it thinking? Stretching? What? Stretching is a good way to relieve aches and pains. We weren't anticipating any more turbulence, so if you like, undo your belts and... No, I'm good. I think I'll rest a bit. Walk around a bit? Or, that's perfectly fine. Excuse me, I have to make some calibrations. Wasn't quite sure where that had come from. They all seemed so cheery now, eager to please. There was, as well, something new in her eyes, a glint of something. She seemed like a different person. Different from the machine I spoke with when I boarded, I meant. I thought I might have been a spark, or something like that, in her eyes. Wait, she? Her? It was still a machine, for God's sake. Why they designed them like this, I never know. I shook my head forcefully, as if to force out the intrusive thoughts. An awkward silence fell over the cockpit as the AI continued to fiddle with the display interfaces. I got a look at the expression on her face. Huh? Did they program it so the corner of her mouth would twitch? She was fidgeting with herself. It was a little painful to watch. Hey, I spoke up, but stopped mid-sentence. Shoot. What was its name? I committed it to memory at all. She turned to me with those curious blue eyes. Yes, sir. Budapest. That was it, I thought. The unchanged expression on her face meant I'd hit the mark. At least my brain was still in one piece. I just want to say, thanks for, saving me and all that. Oh, I only did what my other personal navigator would have done. It was my pleasure to... No, really. That was really incredible. You knew exactly what you had to do. I wasn't much help. Budapest stared back at me silently for a moment. It seemed to stretch to eternity. I scratched the back of my neck, thinking of what to follow up with. I'd be dead if you hadn't handled things the way you did, so, really, thank you. It was my pleasure. I'm just happy that you're safe. There was a look in her eyes again. She stared at me often, surely studying me, watching how I moved, how I spoke, how I breathed. But it was more than that. She looked straight into me, up front, honest. Alright. Wow. So, we're going to save it here. Alright. Wow, this is more than I expected. I was not expecting much, and I actually was not expecting to actually go along with this as far as I did, but I actually got into the story, so I actually cannot wait to get back into this, and I am going to complete the series on it. So thank all of you so much for watching, and as always, I will see all of you in the next video. See ya!